Hello and welcome. Today we're diving into a huge question. How in the world do you write a single rule book for a brand new nation of over 300 million people? We're going deep into the story behind the Indian Constitution, a journey of struggle, brilliant debate, and incredible vision that, trust me, is absolutely essential if you're studying Indian polity.
So here's our game plan. First up, we'll tackle the big why. What's the point of a constitution, really? Then we'll trace the long, hard fight just to get the right to write one. We'll look at who was actually in the room where it happened, dive into the marathon process of drafting it, and finally, we'll get to the moment the Republic of India was officially born.
Okay, let's kick things off at square one with the most basic question of all. Why go through years and years of painstaking work just to create one document? What's the fundamental purpose of a constitution?
Just think about it on a smaller scale. In any group, any family, what stops the strongest person from just taking over? That very simple, very human question is right at the heart of why an entire country needs a supreme set of rules.
There's a great way to think about this called the big brother problem. Imagine an older sibling who always hogs the remote, always takes the last slice of cake, and just makes up the rules to suit themselves, right? Without a set of household rules that everyone agrees on, the younger sibling is completely out of luck. A constitution, well, that's the set of rules for the whole nation.
And that brings us to this incredibly powerful idea, the rule of law. It's one of the most important concepts in modern society. It means that nobody, not the richest person, not the most powerful politician, not even the big brother from our example, is above the law. It's what replaces the rule of might is right with the rule of fairness for all. So, we've got the why. The need for rules was crystal clear. But how did India even get the chance to write its own rulebook? Well, let me tell you, it wasn't just handed over on a silver platter. It was fought for decades. This timeline just shows you how the momentum built up over time. It starts as an idea, with Gandhi talking about self-determination. But then, in 1934, M.N. Roy gives it a name, a Constituent Assembly. A year later, the Indian National Congress makes it an official demand. And notice the evolution by 1938. Nehru isn't just asking for an assembly. He's saying it has to be elected by all adults, with no outside interference. The British tried to offer compromises, like the Cripps Mission in '42, but India was past the point of accepting half measures.
And then, after World War II, the pressure was just too much to ignore. The British sent the Cabinet Mission in 1946, which finally paved the way for an assembly. So the massive question became, who would actually be the ones to sit down and write India's destiny?
The magic number at the start was 389. That was the total number of members. But this wasn't just a number pulled out of a hat. It was a carefully designed formula meant to represent the incredibly complex political map of India back then.
And this breakdown is where it gets really interesting, because it shows the two Indias of the time. You had 296 seats for what was called British India, the areas directly under colonial control, and then you had these other 93 seats, set aside for the hundreds and hundreds of princely states, which were ruled by their own monarch.
Now, for those 296 provincial seats, elections were held. But these weren't direct elections where everyone voted. Instead, members of the existing provincial governments did the voting. And the result? A huge win for the Indian National Congress. They took 208 seats, giving them a clear majority, which would be incredibly important in the debates that followed. So, here's the key thing to remember about this assembly. It was a hybrid. It was part elected, though indirectly, and part nominated by the rulers of the princely states. This unique structure, as you can imagine, later became a pretty big point of criticism.
All right, so the members are chosen. The assembly meets for the very first time on December 9th, 1946. It's a hugely historic day, but it also starts under a bit of a dark cloud, because the Muslim League decided to boycott the meeting, still pushing for a separate nation.
Just a few days later, on December 13th, Jawaharlal Nehru stands up and delivers what's known as the Objectives Resolution. This was so much more than a speech. This was the mission statement. It was the guiding star that laid out the philosophy and the ultimate goal of this whole incredible undertaking.
And look at the words here: justice, liberty, equality, fraternity. This is the very soul of the new India they were trying to build. It also specifically promised to protect minorities and marginalized communities. These ideas would go on to form the very core of the preamble to our Constitution.
Now get this, it's pretty amazing. While the Assembly was doing this monumental, future-shaping work,
it also had to wear a second hat. As the constituent body, with Dr. Rajendra Prasad as chairman, they wrote the Constitution. But at the same time, it also acted as India's first parliament, the legislative body, with G.V. Mavalankar as speaker, passing the everyday laws needed to actually run the country.
Of course, in 1947, history took a massive, tragic turn with the partition of India. Once the Mountbatten Plan made it official, the members from the regions that would become Pakistan withdrew from the assembly. And just like that, the total strength dropped from 389 down to 299.
To get the job done, the assembly formed a bunch of committees. But the most famous, the one everyone remembers, was the drafting committee. This was the group, chaired by the legal genius Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, that was given the colossal task of taking all the ideas and debates and turning them into the actual legal text of the Constitution.
So the drafting committee worked tirelessly. They published a draft, and then it was thrown open to the public and the assembly for debate. We're talking thousands of proposed amendments. Every single clause was picked apart, debated, and refined. And after all that incredible effort, the final document was finally ready.
Just let that sink in for a moment. 2 years, 11 months, and 18 days. Nearly 3 full years of nonstop work. They held 11 sessions and studied the constitutions of about 60 other countries to find the best ideas that would work for India. That number alone tells you everything you need to know about the dedication that went into this.
And then the day finally came. On November 26, 1949, the Constitution of India was officially adopted. As the preamble so beautifully says, it was the day that we, the people of India, give to ourselves this Constitution. And today, we celebrate that historic moment as Constitution Day.
But you might be wondering, if it was adopted in November, why do we celebrate Republic Day on January 26th? Well, that day was chosen for a very specific, very powerful historical reason. It was to honor January 26, 1930, the day the Indian National Congress first declared Purna Swaraj, or complete independence from the British. It was a symbolic gesture that marked India's birth as a true sovereign republic.
Now, it's really important to note that the whole process wasn't seen as perfect by everyone. There were major criticisms. Some said it wasn't a truly representative body, since people didn't vote for the members directly. Others argued it wasn't truly sovereign because it was created based on British proposals. And, of course, there was criticism that it was dominated by the Congress Party and by lawyers, which some felt made the final text way too complicated.
And that brings us to the final debate, one that still echoes today. Was the Indian Constitution, as its critics called it, just a borrowed document, a patchwork of ideas from other countries? Was it a lawyer's paradise, intentionally complex and inaccessible? Or was it a brilliant, living charter that created the foundation for the world's largest, most vibrant democracy to not only survive but thrive? That's the big question to think about.